Alright, hey guys, and welcome back to the channel for a very special video. As you guys would have seen on the channel already, I got the chance to play Star Wars Squadrons early. Thank you to the EA Game Changers program for making this video possible. And I am joined by a special guest today, my good friend Sammyboiii. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing very well, thanks for asking. How are you?
Good, man, good. Are you ready to talk about some Squadrons?
Very, very much so.
Epic. So yeah, obviously we got a sit down and a little bit of time to test play the game just recently. What was some of your initial thoughts on the gameplay itself?
Honestly, it was a lot different than I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be very similar to Starfighter Assault, just because obviously, you know, they did have a bit of a hand in working on Battlefront, so I thought it would be somewhat similar with their own little touch, but honestly, it was completely different in a good way. It was so much more in depth, and yeah, there was really nothing that stood out to me that I thought was an issue. It was definitely a bit hard at the start, but I think that's more just a learning curve than anything. But yeah, overall I really liked it, and yeah, it was a lot more in depth than I thought it would be.
Yeah, definitely. And you touched on like the learning curve of the game itself. In terms of comparing it to something like a Starfighter Assault in Battlefront 2, how do you think it compares, and what are your main takeaways or differences from that?
I think it will definitely take a lot longer than Starfighter Assault to get used to. I think it's kind of like fairly easy to just, you know, get the general idea of what you're doing, but I think it's going to be one of those games where it'll be like easy to play but hard to master. Like I think to get to that top level, it's going to take probably months of consistent playing. So it was similar in a way at the start. How I said Starfighter Assault's pretty easy to get used to. It was easy to just figure out the basics, but once we started playing multiplayer, I was getting wrecked. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And before we go too far, guys, I should mention that Sammy does have like a part 2 to this video on his channel. So I'm going to link that down below as well, so you guys can check it out, where we talk about a few other topics as well. One of which we do touch on in his video, which is the power management system. And I think for me, this was one of the hardest things to get used to, is diverting power to your subsystems, whether it be your engines, your shields, or like your firepower. Sammy, how did you find like balancing those kind of things and the behavior behind that new power management system? Because obviously it's not something we got in Starfighter Assault, and it's brand new to everyone.
Yeah, it was actually, to be honest, I think that might have been like, it was probably my favorite part of the whole game, is trying to figure out, like, you know, say there's a starfighter that's attacking your ship and you're a bit too far away. You might want to, put all the power to your speed and try and gain some ground on it. But then you had to, if you're in that mode, you kind of can't attack it very well. So then you have to kind of switch over, and then say it starts attacking you, you got to switch to your shields and stuff. So it was definitely very unique. I've never really played anything similar to that, to be honest. So definitely very unique, and yeah, like I said, that was probably my favorite part. Actually, was just trying to learn like the right time to use it, and that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously when we first started playing, they let us play through what was the Prologue, which is essentially the first part of the single player campaign that's going to be in the game. This is kind of more of a tutorial stage for those of us that were obviously playing it for the first time. How did you find that Prologue was, in terms of, there was a little bit of story there, which we won't touch on because we don't want any spoilers for anyone, but how did you find that the initial sort of tutorial part of it, did it help very much? Could it have been improved? What were your thoughts there?
I feel like it did most of what it needed to do. I remember like the devs did mention that, there's a bit more you learn throughout the campaign, and like obviously we didn't get to play the whole campaign, so I was going to say that I feel like it could have taught us a bit more, but then maybe that's just because we only played the prologue. But it did, it taught us the basics, and it taught us essentially just everything we need to jump into just some multiplayer dogfight, and that was, it was pretty decent, but I would have loved to have, learned a bit more throughout the rest of the campaign, because they did mention there was a few extra little mechanics and stuff that you can figure out, but I think it was a decent starting point anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there were a few things that I definitely could have used help with, and obviously, like you said, with the rest of the campaign, we will learn that as we go through it and play it a bit more. But yeah, just in that prologue, I think there are a few things in terms of the targeting system and locking onto enemies that I would have liked to have been told a bit more clearly in that first prologue part. But again, that's something that probably will be shown in the rest of the campaign. So again, just minor feedback in that case. But going back to multiplayer, we obviously got to play a little bit of Dogfight, which is the 5v5 mode. And then we also got to play a bit of Fleet Battles. Which mode did you prefer, and what were the things you were most impressed about during the multiplayer experience?
Well, I think I prefer Fleet Battle just because it's, there's objectives and stuff, but I did way better in the Dogfight. So for this play, like for what we played, I probably would say Dogfights, to be honest, just because it was a little bit easier. Not so many distractions and stuff, but I think once I get into it, Fleet Battles will definitely be where I spend 99% of the time, because it's definitely a lot. It's essentially like the difference between Galactic Assault and Blast, for example. It's just a much bigger and better sort of game mode. So yeah, I'd say for right now, Dogfight was the one that I enjoyed more, just because I wasn't getting absolutely beamed the whole time. But yeah, I think I'll enjoy Fleet Battles a little bit more once the game actually drops.
Yeah, I know. I think I agree with you 100%. Like during today's playtest, I definitely enjoyed Dogfight more, because it's that watered down mode where you just jump in, it's you and your starfighter versus them and their starfighters, 5v5, and you're just trying to kill the other team. Like there's no distractions. You're not getting absolutely obliterated by a capital ship that's like 300 meters to your right. I think that for me was a much more enjoyable experience, and it was easy because we were still getting used to the controls and, like we said, the power management system, which is a little bit complex, and some of the maneuvers and things that we didn't quite know how to do, but we were trying to experiment with. They were much easier to do in Dogfight than it was in Fleet Battles. But Fleet Battles, yeah, was still a lot of fun. And, for someone like me who struggled to actually get kills in that mode, you still had the objective there to play as well, which, made me feel like I was actually doing something, which was,
yeah, exactly.
Much, much better for someone like me who needs that sort of reinforcement that I'm actually contributing. So
yeah, exactly.
What was the thing you were probably most impressed with out of the gameplay?
That's a tough one. It's either going to be the power management system that we touched on. That was a lot better than I thought it would be, and a lot sort of easier as well. Either that, or even just the little things like the evading missiles and that type of thing. One thing I actually really loved too in Fleet Battles was forget what they're called, not the capital ship, but like the smaller ships. They have like sort of healing stations. I thought that was a really cool thing to, like, you're out in the battle, and then you take a bit of damage or whatever, and you try and get back to your own side and sort of heal up and then get back into the battle. I thought that was really awesome, as well as the fact you can actually go pretty much and like board your capital ship and either change ship or just go back out in the same one, and it kind of repairs it. So that was something that I was really happy with too. It kind of allows for a bit more strategic play. If you've taken a bit of damage and you're not much used to your team, rather than going out and dying, you can go back and heal up and that type of thing, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like there's so many tactical advantages to certain aspects of the game. Like you said, you can go back to sort of your base where you spawn out of, and there's like repair points, or you can even switch which starfighter class you're playing during that time when you board the ship. So I think that was a really cool feature as well. And speaking of being able to switch classes, we obviously got to play all 4 classes during this test. What was your favorite class out of all of them, and why?
It's tough. I probably would say that I spent maybe 60 to 70% as the fighter class, just because it seemed like the sort of jack of all trades, and because I didn't really know what on earth I was doing. I just went for the basic one, but I did play all of them, and I've really enjoyed the TIE Reaper, which I think is in the support class. Really enjoyed using that. Support seemed a little bit harder to use because they're essentially weaker, but they sort of help your team, so I think they're very sort of team based. I really enjoyed the Interceptor as well, both the TIE Interceptor and the A-Wing. They were sort of like fast little zippy, flying around everywhere, and you could kind of evade enemies pretty easy, but they took damage pretty easy too. So I don't know what I'd say is my favorite. I'd probably say the Interceptor class, actually, just because they were the ones I did best with. But yeah, the TIE Reaper was probably my favorite, like, specific ship overall, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. And I tend to agree. Like, the Interceptor class was so much fun. Like, I got a little bit of time. I only got a little bit of time in the A-Wing, but I played a fair bit of, the TIE Interceptor. But when I was playing the A-Wing, I just felt like no one could hit me. It's so quick and nimble, and it shoots laser beams. Like, that thing does so much damage, which is exactly kind of the point. But then to balance it, it's like a glass cannon. It takes damage very easily, and you get destroyed very easily. But that extra maneuverability kind of counters that as well. So yeah, definitely the most fun class for me to play. But again, I did play a fair bit of the Bomber, which was surprising for me, but there was an ability upgrade which gave it like 600 rounds before you had to actually go into cooldown, which with my poor aim at the time actually helped me in a lot of ways. So when you're attacking those objectives in fleet battles, that 600 rounds, before you have to cooldown did big damage to the objectives, and that's what I found myself doing for a lot of it. So I think those two classes for me are the ones I've played the most. But again, like, who can go past an X-Wing, and then, the chance to play a TIE Reaper as well is always, a cool experience. So definitely a mix of everything. But yeah, the Interceptor, I think, just takes the cake at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I think one thing that really impressed me with them all is that they, like, I don't know, I'm actually going to say this already. I don't know if I've ever played a more immersive Star Wars game in my life. It was so, like, you're inside the cockpit and you can literally hear your character, like, moving the throttle, and you can hear all the beeping of, like, what's going on in your HUD and stuff. It was just, yeah, they've really nailed the sort of immersion side of the starfighters, I think.
Yeah, 100% agree. And, obviously not everything in the game is immersive. Like, you talk about the inside of the cockpit, and what we've seen from the trailers and from our experience with the game, like, you get your little bobblehead in there and you can customize your hologram, and you can have little things hanging from the side as well. There's different options on both sides, but I still think, 100%, if you're looking for an immersive Star Wars experience, this is something next level. The graphics are obviously a step down from something like a Battlefront 2. They're not quite the same standard, but we did play an early access version, so who knows, it could get better from here on out. But yeah, being in the cockpit, playing in first person, seeing the explosion right in front of your face as you shoot through an enemy starfighter, and you sort of flying straight towards them and they explode right in front of you. It was just something crazy. It gets your heart going, and yeah, definitely a lot of excitement and immersion to do with this game. So
yeah, for sure. Very, very excited to especially play the rest of the campaign. I think see how immersive it gets throughout that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm excited for the rest of the campaign too, purely because, like, I think it's going to teach us a fair bit as well. Like, the developers were talking a bit about, different skills that you'll learn throughout the campaign, like the drift mechanic, how you can actually drift your starfighter and sort of switch gears and pull quick maneuvers and things like that. That's something that we didn't really get to do today because we didn't get taught how to do it. And I think they tried to explain it during one of the Q&A sessions, and
it didn't work.
I think I think some of the guys got the hang of it. But yeah, it definitely didn't work very well for me. I couldn't get the hang of it. But yeah, just learning new maneuvers and then taking that into multiplayer has me really excited. But one thing I did want to touch on was the customization, and we talked about it in your video as well. What were your overall thoughts on the amount of customization? Because we both did say that we were pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it was a lot more than I originally thought it would be. Not only like within each, like, I guess, category, but there was actually probably more categories than I thought as well. Like, it wasn't. We sort of saw in the gameplay reveal that there was the little Ewok bobblehead and stuff. I thought it would just be like one or two things for your cockpit, but you can actually choose like different little parts for your cockpit, and then there's also like the skins for the for your fighter, and then there's like the decals, and then even just down to your customization of the character and everything. Like, especially the character, I think that was the most that I was impressed with, is like the choose the race and the different face that you've got, and then the helmet and all the clothing and stuff. It was a lot more in depth than I thought it would be.
Yeah, for sure. There was like 5 or 6 different things you can actually customize on your pilot, which I think was one of the main things that I liked. And we talk about the skins and, paying homage to Star Wars, there was actually like the Sabine Wren colorways in there with the helmet and then with the Starfighter as well, which I thought was a really cool touch. And, you know, being able to chrome out your Starfighter or make it look like it's been burnt to a crisp, you know, it's all rusted and things kind of rat rotted in a way. And yeah, between that and your pilot customization with jackets, pants, you know, species, helmets, everything top to bottom could be customized. And then on top of that, you've got your components, which will, actually change the way your Starfighter plays or how much damage certain things do is really incredible. And they went full on in depth with the customization, which was amazing.
Yeah, and I didn't even touch on that. The customization for your actual like fighter in terms of not how it looks, but like the mechanics of it, that was really pretty well done too. I think they said that there was like 60 different things to choose from. Yeah. So like, yeah, it was. I'm not gonna lie, I barely looked at that. I looked at it for a few different. I think I looked at it for the fighter class and maybe the Interceptor, but I didn't really toy with that too much. But even from what I saw, yeah, it was really in depth, and I'm definitely keen to, you know, play through the game and unlock a lot of those things and try and, you know, get my own little setup kind of going.
Yeah, for sure. And it'd be cool to play with different loadouts and see what works best for what class and figuring out the real skill behind customizing your loadout and then taking it to a squad level on playing certain components on your Starfighter for what your squad needs and what they have that you will potentially benefit you in a way. And one thing I got to test out was, I mentioned the 600 rounds on the bomber, but on the fighter class, there was, you could change the cannons to ion cannons, which essentially disabled other ships, which was actually so fun to do. You got like a little meter that was on the enemy, and as you shoot them, that meter would run out, like as if you were doing damage. And when that meter ran out, they lose control of their ship, and it just puts them into like a stun lock. And from there, you can just hit them with rockets because you're already locked onto them, and they've got no way of getting out of it because their systems have shut down. So probably one of the coolest bits of like diverse gameplay that I got to experience was that. And you know, if that's just one component, you know, there's 60 different components to play with. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun testing those out.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like that, for me, that already adds a lot of replayability. Like it's not just like, you know, pure shooting. You can actually go and, for example, the support class, I think it was the support class, they've got like a tractor beam and stuff. Like there's so many different ways you can actually go about playing. You don't have to go hunting for kills. You can literally just like freeze someone for your team to kill, or you can, you know, be going around healing your team, or you can be using just a regular tie and just straight up going for kills. So it does seem like there's going to be like pretty much unlimited ways to play the game, rather than just like, for example, in Starfighter Assault, it's just like there's the objectives, there's the enemies, kill and do the objectives. That's pretty much all there is to do. But in this, it does seem like there's a lot of different ways to play, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. And once voice chat becomes, you know, accessible to everyone, and you have your regular squad mates, the five of you teaming up together, it's going to add a whole new dimension to the game for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I'm definitely very, very keen to play it on launch with all the lads, I think.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get some games in for sure. Yeah. That's definite. All right, man. Well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for all of this. I'm sure we'll have more videos and talks about Squadrons in the future because there's plenty to cover with this game. But I appreciate you coming on today, man.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
That's all good. And like I said, guys, there's going to be a link down in the description below to the other half of this video, which is on Sammy's channel. So make sure you guys go check that out. Sub to him if you're not. I'm sure you probably already are. But if you aren't, make sure to hit that subscribe button on mine and his channel if you are new. And we'll talk about more Squadrons in the future. So thank you guys for tuning in today. I will see you in the next one. And may the Force be with you always.
The Sith are all powerful.